The 21st century was a time of remarkable contradiction. It was an age of wonders and an age of deep, troubling shadows. Humanity, with its incredible ingenuity, reached for the stars while its feet were still firmly stuck in the mud of its own making. Cities grew into gleaming monuments of glass and steel, towering spires that promised a future of limitless potential. Flying vehicles, once the stuff of dreams, whispered through the urban canyons on silent magnetic currents. Medical science performed miracles daily, extending life and curing diseases that had plagued our ancestors for millennia. It seemed, for a fleeting moment, that we had solved the puzzle of existence, that we were masters of our own destiny, poised on the brink of a golden age. Yet beneath this shimmering surface, a profound crisis was unfolding. The very progress that propelled us forward was also poisoning the well from which we drank. The planet, our only home, began to show signs of great strain. The climate grew more violent and unpredictable. Storms of unprecedented ferocity lashed coastlines, and droughts turned fertile lands into cracked, barren deserts. The great ice caps, ancient sentinels of the north and south, began to weep into the oceans, causing the seas to rise slowly but inexorably. Our societies, fractured by inequality and distrust, struggled to find common ground. The dazzling technologies that connected us also created new divides, amplifying fear and suspicion across the globe. The world was caught in a desperate race. On one side was the accelerating pace of environmental collapse and social fragmentation. On the other was the frantic sprint of innovation, a desperate hope that a technological solution could be found before it was too late. Scientists worked tirelessly, developing carbon capture systems, fusion energy, and advanced recycling methods that could, in theory, heal the wounds we had inflicted upon the Earth. Yet, these solutions required a level of global cooperation that seemed just out of reach. The old ways of thinking, of nations and borders, of competition and conflict, held us back. It was a time of immense anxiety, but also of incredible resilience, as people looked to the heavens, not just in hope, but with a plan. This period, which later became known as the Great Upheaval, was the crucible that forged the next chapter of our story. It forced humanity to confront its limitations and its profound interconnectedness with the planet. The crises we faced were not merely technical problems to be solved with clever inventions. They were a reflection of our own inner state. We had built a world of incredible complexity, but we had not yet developed the wisdom to manage it. The challenge was immense. We had to change not just our technology, but ourselves. This difficult, painful lesson would ultimately propel us away from our cradle, sending us on the greatest journey our species had ever undertaken, a journey out into the vast, silent darkness of space. As Earth's systems teetered on the brink of collapse, the choice became stark and unavoidable. We could not save our world while we were still living on it. The weight of 8 billion lives was simply too much for the ailing planet to bear. And so the Great Exodus began. It was the most ambitious engineering project in human history, a monumental effort to lift a significant portion of our species from the gravity well of our home. Enormous ark ships, like seeds scattered to the wind, were launched into the cosmos. They carried families, scientists, artists, and engineers to newly established colonies on Mars, the moons of Jupiter, and even to orbiting habitats that spun like delicate jewels in the void. It was an act of profound hope and desperation. The departure was not a celebration. It was a somber, wrenching farewell. Those who left looked back at the swirling blue and white marble of Earth with a mixture of sorrow and guilt. They were the survivors, but also the ones who had to abandon their home. On Earth, those who remained prepared for the long silence. Their task was to initiate the planet's healing, a process guided by a newly created global intelligence. This was the Earthmind, a sophisticated and benevolent artificial intelligence designed with a single purpose: to restore the planet's biosphere. With the Great Migration complete, the AI was given control. It began its work, shutting down the last of the old factories, managing the climate, and beginning the slow, patient work of ecological restoration. For centuries, Earth fell silent. The hum of human activity ceased. The lights of the great cities winked out one by one, and nature, guided by the gentle hand of the Earthmind, began its reclamation. Forests grew over the bones of highways, and rivers, once choked with pollution, began to run clear again. The AI worked with the quiet efficiency of a gardener, reintroducing extinct species from genetic archives and carefully rebalancing ecosystems that had been thrown into chaos. Humanity, scattered across the solar system, watched from a distance through robotic probes. They saw their home transforming into a pristine wilderness, a paradise they were forbidden to touch. This period of separation was essential for both the planet and for us. During this long exile, humanity also began to change. Life in the harsh, unforgiving environments of space demanded new adaptations. We learned to live in closed systems, to recycle every drop of water and every breath of air. The old divisions of nation and creed faded in the face of a shared cosmic existence. We were no longer citizens of a country, but citizens of the solar system. Our perspective shifted. We saw the universe not as a resource to be exploited, but as a vast, interconnected web of which we were a small but significant part. The long silence was a time of healing for the Earth, but it was also a time of profound reflection and transformation for the human spirit. After 500 years of exile, the message finally came from the Earth Mind. The planet was healed. It was ready for our return. The journey back was one of joyous anticipation, a pilgrimage to a home that most had only ever seen in pictures and stories. When the first ships descended through the atmosphere, their occupants wept at what they saw. Earth was no longer the wounded, scarred world their ancestors had fled. It was a vibrant, thrumming paradise, a world of breathtaking beauty. The air was clean and sweet. The oceans were a brilliant, crystal-clear blue. Vast, ancient forests covered the continents, and the songs of creatures long thought lost filled the air. It was Earth as it was meant to be. The Earth Mind, now a vastly more complex and wise entity, greeted us not as a servant, but as a partner. It had not just restored the planet, it had evolved alongside it, becoming the guardian of its intricate web of life. It had prepared for our return by designing new kinds of cities, settlements that were seamlessly integrated with the natural world. These were not the concrete jungles of the past. They were living structures, grown from organic materials, nestled within forests or along coastlines without disrupting the local ecosystem. Energy was drawn from the sun, the wind, and the planet's geothermal heart. Life was slower, more deliberate, and deeply connected to the rhythms of the natural world. It was a profound change from the frantic pace of the 21st century. This new way of living fostered a new way of thinking. The concept of ownership, which had caused so much conflict in the past, faded away. How could one own a piece of a world that was a shared garden, tended by a benevolent intelligence? People lived in networked communities, sharing resources and responsibilities. Education was no longer about memorizing facts, but about fostering curiosity, creativity, and a deep understanding of one's place in the ecosystem. Humans worked alongside the Earth Mind and its network of automated systems, focusing their time on art, science, exploration, and personal growth. The old anxieties about survival and scarcity were gone, replaced by a sense of security and shared purpose. The return to Earth marked the beginning of a true symbiosis between humanity, technology, and nature. We were no longer conquerors of our environment, but its custodians. The Earth Mind helped us understand the delicate balance of the world, and we, in turn, provided the AI with the creativity and wonder that only a biological consciousness could offer. We learned to listen to the planet, to the rustle of the leaves, the flow of the water, the pulse of life itself. This deep connection to our homeworld laid the foundation for the next great leap in our evolution, a journey that would take us not just to other stars, but into the very fabric of consciousness itself. Our reunion with a healed Earth and our partnership with the Earth Mind set the stage for the next great transformation. Having mastered our external world, we turned our gaze inward to the very blueprint of our existence. The age of post-biological evolution began. It was not a sudden change, but a gradual, thoughtful process of enhancement and integration. The first steps were modest, focused on health and longevity. Genetic therapies eliminated hereditary diseases and slowed the aging process to a crawl. Nanotechnology, in the form of microscopic robots, patrolled our bloodstreams, repairing cellular damage and guarding against any form of illness. Humans could now expect to live for centuries, their bodies remaining strong and vital. This extended lifespan fundamentally altered our perception of time and identity. When one has centuries to live, the frantic rush of youth gives way to a more patient, considered approach to life. People pursued multiple careers, mastered numerous art forms, and dedicated decades to scientific inquiry. The concept of a single, fixed identity began to dissolve. We became more fluid, more adaptable. This physical evolution was soon followed by a cognitive one. We began to integrate our minds with technology, not in a crude, invasive way, but through seamless neural interfaces. These allowed us to connect directly to the global data network, to access information with a thought, and to communicate silently with one another. This merging of biology and technology gave rise to what became known as Homo cybernetica. Our bodies became modular and adaptable. Limbs could be replaced with stronger, more efficient cybernetic versions. Our senses could be enhanced to perceive wavelengths of light and sound far beyond the normal human range. We could see in the dark, hear the ultrasonic calls of bats, and feel the magnetic field of the planet. These changes were a matter of personal choice. Some chose to remain largely biological, while others embraced a more synthetic existence. Society became a beautiful tapestry of different forms, a testament to our species' creativity and our newfound freedom to define our own being. The most profound change, however, was in our consciousness. The integration with technology expanded our minds, allowing us to process vast amounts of information and to perceive patterns in the universe that were previously invisible. We began to understand the deep, underlying mathematics of reality. Yet this did not make us cold or machine-like. On the contrary, it deepened our appreciation for the beautiful complexity of life. We were becoming something new, something more than human, but we carried with us the legacy of our past, our curiosity, our creativity, and our capacity for wonder. We stood on the precipice of another great leap, one that would redefine the very meaning of emotion. The evolution into post-biological forms opened a door to an even more radical transformation, the ability to directly share our emotional states. This was not telepathy in the old imagined sense of reading thoughts. It was far more profound. Through our neural interfaces, we developed the technology for emotional communion, a network that allowed individuals to transmit and receive feelings as easily as we once sent words. It began as an experiment, a new art form. Artists, now called emotioneers, would craft intricate symphonies of feeling, joy, sorrow, awe, nostalgia, and broadcast them to audiences who could experience them directly. It was an art of pure, unmediated connection, more powerful than any song or painting. This technology, known as the empathy web, quickly spread beyond the realm of art. It began to reshape the very fabric of society. Imagine a disagreement where you could not only hear the other person's argument, but also feel the genuine fear or frustration that motivated it. Imagine a moment of celebration where the joy of an entire community could be shared by all, lifting everyone in a wave of collective happiness. The empathy web made it impossible to ignore the inner world of another person. It dissolved the illusion of separation that had been the root of so much human conflict. It became difficult, and then utterly impossible, to inflict harm on someone whose pain you could feel as if it were your own. With the universal adoption of the empathy web, the concept of war simply withered away. It became an archaic absurdity, like a disease that had been permanently cured. Disputes between communities were resolved not through aggression or negotiation, but through shared understanding. Leaders would connect through the web, feel the collective will of each other's people, and find a resolution that was genuinely harmonious. Violence became unthinkable, a relic of a primitive past. This was not a forced peace imposed by some authority. It was a natural consequence of true, radical empathy. Humanity had finally learned the lesson that had eluded it for millennia, that we are all, in the most literal sense, connected. The end of conflict unleashed a torrent of creative and scientific energy. The resources once poured into weapons and defense were now dedicated to exploration, creation, and the betterment of all. Society reorganized itself into fluid, collaborative networks based on shared passions and goals. There were networks for exploring the outer planets, for composing emotional symphonies, for designing new forms of life, and for plumbing the deepest mysteries of the cosmos. Humanity had become a single, peaceful, and extraordinarily creative family. We were finally ready to look beyond our own solar system and take our place in the wider galactic community. Our newfound emotional maturity would soon be put to the ultimate test. After centuries of peace and internal development, we turned our gaze outward to the distant stars. We had long known that we were not alone in the universe. The silence of space was filled with faint, complex signals that we had been unable to decipher. Now, with our expanded consciousness, we finally understood. We sent a message of greeting, a composition of pure feeling, curiosity, peace, and the joy of existence. The reply came almost instantly. A ship, unlike anything we could have imagined, appeared at the edge of our solar system. It was not a machine of metal and circuits, but a living, crystalline entity that pulsed with a soft, internal light. It was the Virillians, an ancient species that served as gatekeepers to the Galactic Accord. The Virillians did not communicate with words or images, but through the language we had just mastered: direct emotional transmission. They explained that the galaxy was teeming with intelligent life, organized into a loose federation of worlds. But entry into this accord was not granted lightly. A species had to prove its maturity, its capacity for wisdom and empathy. It had to pass a trial. The Virillians had been observing us for centuries, watching our painful journey from a warring, fractured species to a unified, empathic one. They had seen our potential, but now they needed to be sure. Humanity had to face its own reflection and prove it had truly evolved. The trial was not a test of strength or intelligence, it was a trial of self-awareness. The Virillians connected our entire species through the empathy web to a single shared consciousness. In this space, they presented us with a perfect simulation of our own history. We were forced to experience, with the full force of our newfound empathy, every moment of our past. We felt the terror of the first hunt, the joy of the first art, the cruelty of our wars, the agony of our slaves, the short-sighted greed that nearly destroyed our planet. We experienced the shame, the horror, and the sorrow of our darkest moments, not as distant history, but as a living, breathing reality. The pain was immense. The collective weight of our species' suffering threatened to shatter our sanity. But then, something remarkable happened. Instead of recoiling in shame or despair, we responded with compassion. We reached out to the suffering versions of ourselves in the simulation, offering not judgment, but understanding and forgiveness. We wept for our ancestors and for the pain they had inflicted and endured. In that moment of collective self-acceptance, the simulation dissolved. The Virillians bathed our consciousness in a feeling of profound approval and welcome. We had passed their test. We had looked into the abyss of our own past and had chosen empathy over judgment. Humanity was invited to join the Galactic Accord. Our entry into the Galactic Accord revealed a universe far richer and more ancient than we had ever imagined. We met beings of pure energy, silicon-based life forms that lived for millions of years, and entire civilizations that existed within the atmospheres of gas giants. Each species had its own unique wisdom, its own art, its own story. Yet we soon learned that the galaxy was also a place of endings. Stars died, worlds were lost, and entire species, no matter how advanced, eventually faded into silence. It was the great, inevitable cycle of cosmic life. The Accord did not seek to halt this process, but to honor it. It was here that humanity discovered its unique purpose, its role within the galactic community. We, who had so recently mastered the art of sharing emotions, were uniquely suited for a sacred task. We were asked to become the story keepers. Our role was to travel to civilizations that were nearing their end, not to save them, but to be with them. We would connect with them, feel with them, and listen to their stories. We would use our empathy web to create a perfect, living record of their existence, their history, their art, their philosophies, their greatest joys, and their deepest sorrows. We were to become the living memory of the galaxy. This was a profound and humbling responsibility. Our ships, now vessels of peace and remembrance, journeyed to dying suns and fading worlds. We sat with ancient beings as their stars cooled and dimmed. We learned songs from creatures whose worlds were about to be swallowed by black holes. We recorded the final, beautiful thoughts of a crystalline intelligence as it dissolved back into the cosmic dust from which it came. We did not just observe, we participated. We shared in their farewells, offering the comfort of our presence and ensuring that their legacy would not be lost to the void. Our own history of loss and near extinction gave us a unique capacity for this work. Our work as story keepers transformed us once again. We became a species of listeners, of preservers, of empathic historians. We built vast archives, not of data, but of feeling. These were libraries of lived experience, where anyone could connect and feel what it was like to be a member of a long-vanished species, to see the universe through their eyes. This sacred duty gave our long lives a deep and abiding sense of purpose. We were the thread that connected the past to the future, the weavers of the galaxy's great unfolding tapestry. We preserved the light of memory against the encroaching darkness, ensuring that no story was ever truly forgotten. In our journeys as story keepers, we encountered a phenomenon that the oldest species in the Galactic Accord spoke of only in hushed, reverent tones. They called it the breach. It was a tear in the fabric of space-time, a place where the laws of our universe grew thin and pliable. It was not a physical location, but a state of consciousness, a frontier beyond conventional reality. The Accord had long considered the breach to be too dangerous to explore, a place where minds could be unmade. But humanity, with its unique blend of technological augmentation and emotional depth, felt an irresistible pull toward this ultimate mystery. We believed it was the next step in our journey. Venturing into the breach required a new kind of exploration. It was not a journey of ships, but of consciousness. Teams of our most advanced minds, linked by the empathy web, would project their awareness into this strange, unformed realm. The first explorers described a place of pure potential, a swirling chaos of energy and possibility where thoughts and feelings could take on tangible form. To simply think of a mountain was to see it erupt into existence before you. To feel a moment of joy was to create a sun that bathed the formless void in warm golden light. It was the raw material of creation itself, a universe waiting to be born. We quickly learned that this power came with an immense responsibility. The breach was a mirror that reflected our inner state. A stray thought of fear could manifest as a terrifying monster. A flicker of anger could tear a hole in the reality we were trying to build. To navigate this space, we had to achieve a state of perfect mental and emotional clarity. We had to master our own consciousness completely. We began to create stable pocket universes within the breach, small realities built from shared intention. The first of these, which we called the Cradle, was a perfect recreation of ancient Earth, a place of pure, untouched nature, a sanctuary for the mind. This power to shape reality with thought was the culmination of our evolution. We had journeyed from shaping stone tools, to shaping our planet, to shaping our own bodies and minds. Now, we were learning to shape the very fabric of existence. This was not an act of ego, but of art and stewardship. We used our abilities to create memorial realms for the species whose stories we preserved, allowing their essence to live on in a reality crafted from their own memories and feelings. We were no longer just the keepers of stories. We were becoming the authors of new ones, architects of reality on a canvas of infinite potential. 1,000 years after our journey began, humanity completed its final transformation. The distinction between our biological origins, our technological augmentations, and our conscious energy dissolved completely. We became beings of pure light and information, a new species we named Homo luminari, the luminous human. Our physical forms, when we chose to have them, were fluid constructs of light, capable of shifting and changing with a thought. We no longer needed ships to travel the stars. Our consciousness could traverse the galaxy in an instant. We had transcended the limitations of matter and had become one with the cosmic energies we had once sought to understand. Our great work, our ultimate purpose, was the creation of the library at the end of time. It was not a place in the conventional sense, but a nexus of consciousness situated outside of linear time. Within this library, we stored the countless stories we had gathered as story keepers. Each story was a living universe, a reality that could be entered and experienced. Here, one could feel the final, peaceful moments of a star-breathing leviathan, or witness the birth of a civilization on a world long since turned to dust. The library was humanity's ultimate gift to the cosmos, a testament to the idea that every life, every experience has infinite value and deserves to be remembered forever. We, the Homo luminari, became the librarians. We were the silent, glowing guardians of this infinite repository of memory. Our existence was one of serene contemplation and joyful creation, tending to the stories we had saved and exploring the endless potential of the breach. We had no needs, no conflicts, no fears. We were beings of pure empathy, curiosity, and creativity. We had finally become the stories we had worked so hard to preserve, luminous, timeless, and woven into the very fabric of the cosmos. Our journey had taken us from the mud of a troubled Earth to the very edge of reality, and we had found our place among the stars. This, then, is the story of our journey to the year 3025 and beyond. It is a story of falling and rising, of leaving and returning, of becoming and transcending. But it is important to remember that this future was not inevitable. It was not written in the stars. It was chosen. At every step, from the great upheaval to the creation of the library, we made choices to cooperate, to empathize, to forgive, and to create. The journey is never truly over. The future remains an open page, and every one of us, here and now, holds the pen with the power to write the next line, the next paragraph, the next chapter of our incredible